made by Central, Viewpoint 91 looks at the winners and losers in the construction of the M40.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's with very great pleasure that I now declare open this 59-mile stretch of the M40 between Oxford and Birmingham.
The M40, Britain's newest motorway, a giant feat of engineering that has cost over £300 million to build. In a unique project, we set out to record, over a period of 5 years, the impact of building the new motorway on the countryside, people and wildlife in its path. Britain's first motorway, the M1, was opened in 1959 by Ernest Marples. It heralded a new age of motoring.
For on this magnificent road, the speed which can easily be reached is so great that senses may be numbed and judgment warped. So here are my two suggested mottos. First, take it easy, motorist. And second, if in doubt, don't.
30 years after the M1 was opened, Britain's motorway network had grown to reach most parts of the country. Except for one 59-mile missing link between Oxford and Birmingham. Most people agreed the road was needed, but not only to relieve the now congested M1. Banbury, a market town on the route of the new M40, along with other towns and villages, had been choked by traffic for years, as an ever-increasing number of vehicles pounded through on long-haul journeys to London and the Channel ports. The link would carve a controversial route that would be delayed for 20 years by protests and legal objections. It swallowed thousands of acres of prime farmland and dozens of protected areas. It threatened beauty spots like the Warmington Valley in North Oxfordshire. A key objective of the motorway planners was to minimise the impact of the road, in effect to hide 59 miles of tarmac 6 lanes wide. And there was another headache for the planners. The new road would pass in sight of a National Trust property, Farnborough Hall.
Obviously, no matter where we put a route, it is going to affect some people to a greater or lesser extent. And my job, and the job of the team concerned with designing it, is to minimise that effect. Motorways meet a need which is probably at variance anyway with the general needs of the countryside, but it is a need that society recognises, and our job is to try and balance these two almost irreconcilables.
The motorway will have some serious effects on the landscape that we can see from here. Some of the houses in the villages, such as Warmington, will have views of the road and the traffic. And it's really my job to try and solve some of those problems by providing planting and mounding to screen those views. For example, over one length, we're going to literally tilt the field so that the road and all the traffic in it will be hidden from this viewpoint up here. In other places, we'll be planting small woodlands. We've got a woodland below us of about 3.5 acres that we're going to plant. Altogether, just on the section which we can see from the terrace, we're planting about 41,000 plants, including 5,000 oak trees.
For 5 years, we filmed the construction of the motorway to record the impact that building the new road would have on the countryside and the people caught in its path. We set up 25 camera towers along the length of the route to capture on film the gradual changes to a landscape destined to be covered in concrete forever. We focused particularly on one field that would present the construction team with an enormous challenge. In a meadow barely half a mile wide, 4 structures had to be built to carry the motorway across a railway, a river, a stream and a canal. The most difficult feat of all would be to divert the River Cherwell through a culvert in an embankment 30 feet high. On this section of the route, the people most affected were Martin Nichols and his family. For them, life at Mill House Farm is far more than just a business.
My grandfather's owned this mill farm. There's 126 acres, and it's nearly all beef, mainly beef, just 100 sheep. It's a privilege to have a farm down here. They're quiet and we're very isolated from everything else down here. We don't feel we're in the rat race. If we can get down here, you can forget everything.
Well, it is our way of life. The atmosphere is nice. It's just lovely to walk in the peace and quiet.
We never really truthfully thought the motorway would come through this area. You know, it was like everyone else. There were so many routes, proposed routes and things at the time. And I don't think we'd realised that we'd actually get this motorway put through this farm until we got nearly to the public inquiry. And at that stage, then it began to look as if this was going to be the route that everyone pushed for.
But it wasn't just the Nichols who'd feel the impact. The meadow was home to a host of wildlife. For years it had been their hunting and breeding ground. A vital part of their very survival. Destruction of their habitat could spell the difference between life and death. Work on the M40 was opened with great enthusiasm by the first in a succession of ministers who were to oversee the building of the road.
I think it's very exciting to be here at the start of work on the M40 extension from Birmingham to Oxford. For a modern and efficient economy, you obviously need a modern and efficient road system. And this £250 million extension of the M40 is in fact an investment in the future of the West Midlands. Our national road system is the victim of its own success, and we're acting to relieve congestion today.
A £300 million motorway is big business. There was fierce competition between contractors to place the winning tender. Profits would be won or lost on being able to finish the job ahead of schedule. David Balcombe headed the team building the section that cut across Martin Nichols' farm.
Well, the contract period from the Department of Transport is actually 130 weeks. But when we put forward our tender for this contract, we identified that we would do it in 97 weeks. Thereby saving ourselves a vast amount of time and moving people on quicker to another contract. Number one priority is to find somewhere for the offices. And for a £50 million job, what we've got here is a 12-acre field, and we've got to get the offices, the accommodation, that's everything from toilets to telephones, totally ready within 4 weeks of the contract start date. You're talking in the region of over £200,000 a week for all the people and the machines that we've got here. And tenders are often taken in on almost a negative margin, with the hopes that when you get there and start the job, you will complete it ahead of time, and that's where the profits are made.
The contractor's need for haste made Martin's plight and his battle for compensation ever more frustrating.
They don't give anything away, the Department of Transport. They argue over every point. You don't get anything without really pushing your point home, and then they don't like to give it away.
You have to fight for,
for everything.
rights.
If they had their way, they'd just come in and take it and say, here you are, here's a small amount of compensation for you, thank you very much. And away they'd go.
I prepared this draft schedule following our meeting earlier in the year. Now, this lists all the various items of work which are deemed to be agreed to be provided either by the Department of Transport through their contractor or by your client through his agents or contractor. Item 1.1.1 is the north boundary of King Sutton Mill Road east of the motorway.
Right.
Item 2 is the same boundary of King Sutton Mill Road, but on the west side of the motorway. So that runs down. That runs down between there. Yeah, 1, 2.
Right. Okay, Martin.
Right.
Yeah, carry on.
1, 3 is the west side of the access track from King Sutton Mill Road.
Unfortunately for Martin Nichols, the 6-lane motorway cut not only through his land, but right across his drive, his only lifeline to the outside world.
Come on, can I speak to Mr. Barnes, please? Martin Nichols, King Sutton. Sorry to trouble you again, but I think we've got a major problem now. My drive is disintegrating. They're crossing it with their heavy earth machinery stuff. There's no way we can get out. They're crossing with 2 earth movers and a bulldozer and a digger. It's caving in both sides. I think we shall soon need a Land Rover.
Gordon Baum was chief engineer with the tough job of smoothing out any friction with the public.
I think every farmer suffers an impact of a motorway, but the small farmers I'm always very sorry for. And I'm not sure that they ever feel that they're getting a fair deal out of it.
Len, I've just come across the
overthought plant crossing, and the road is in a terrible state going towards the town. It looks like they've had a brush on it, but could you chase Roy Clark or someone up to get a brush down there fairly quickly? I think Mr. Nichols is in a particularly difficult situation. Everything that he does, going to take his children to school or go to market or move any stock, has to go across the motorway site in effect. And we're doing our best to keep him an access at all times that's usable for all the purposes that he needs as a farmer and as a human being with a family.
Where are you going to? Hardwick Farm? Got a long journey.
Work pushed ahead in the north, but the southern part of the route was still unresolved. The 6-lane highway ended abruptly in a field of wheat, leaving the M40 with a missing link 12.5 miles long. Not surprisingly, nobody wanted the motorway in their backyard. The battle to find an acceptable route had dragged on for over 10 years. In 1981, the Department of Transport proposed a route across Otmore, a thinly populated area, but one loved for its remoteness. Environmentalists played on this to great effect. After a lengthy public inquiry, the department were told to find a different route. Their alternative was called PR, the preferred route. It skirted round Otmore. But this route brought another group of affected residents into the fray. They in turn proposed their alternative route, known as D7.
The Tomley and Burnwood Association was formed earlier this year to try and find an alternative route to the routes that have been proposed across totally open countryside. We believe that these motorway routes can go closer to existing urbanisation, because we also believe that if they go across open countryside, and the way that this is proposed, it'll bring urbanisation itself.
But what chance did the Tomley and Burnwood protesters have against the resources of the government, by this stage desperate to build the missing 12.5-mile section? To have the slightest chance of winning, the protesters knew they'd need expensive professional help. Imaginative measures were used to raise the funds.
What a pair! £22 a loss to 3. Willie, 23. We're taking a bit of time over this because it's a terrible price.
In 1987, another public inquiry opened to decide if the government's route PR should go ahead.
If you had a flow there of 15,000 as opposed to 39,500, what sort of qualitative assessment would you make of that?
Very substantial.
Yes, very substantial. And which route provides that 15,000 very substantial flow?
Are you going to cross-examine me on D7? Or?
Well, just tell me which route it is, please. Music to my ears, Mr. Vincent, of course.
The protesters' route, D7, seemed attractive. It took the M40 close to Oxford and through existing road corridors. But a closer look by the inquiry team revealed this too had its problems. It passed through several sensitive areas. The government was in a fix. If the protesters' route was chosen, it would spark yet another public inquiry and even more vociferous protests from the powerful Oxford community. The awkward decision was the unenviable task of the inquiry inspector.
It certainly would be highly desirable if the matter could be settled at this inquiry. But the fact is that unless I recommend the present published proposals without any real qualification, the matter won't be settled. It's quite likely there would have to be a further inquiry if I select an alternative route.
Even on the north section, it was clear that pleasing the public didn't always produce the most practical route. At Martin Nichols' farm, after just 3 months of construction work, the site was causing problems. A flood meadow is not the ideal place to build a motorway.
The motorway is a good idea, but I'm not so sure as this was the right route through all these wet meadows and this foggy area to put a motorway.
It really is a bit of a nightmare area. I mean,
I don't think any engineer will have chosen to have gone across that sort of area from an engineering point of view. And I think that the decision to go across the valley here was a very difficult decision, and therefore the Department of Transport has made it a very important thing to keep the environment intact as far as it's possible. We just affect that piece of land between the motorway fences, and we try and not damage anything else.
Faced with the tricky task of crossing the Cherwell Valley, the Department of Transport passed the headache on to the contractor.
It is very unusual for the contractor to be asked to design part of the permanent works. Usually, all of the works are designed by the client or the client's representative, and all we come in and do is actually build to those requirements. Once we've constructed the entire road over the meadow, and if it goes down more than 10 millimetres, then the client can instruct us to remove the road, rebuild the embankment and replace the road at our own costs.
The files started to come in for the King Sutton River. No, they're due tomorrow. Today, Tuesday. First load's on its way. Oh, Jim bought them here last night and said they were arriving tomorrow.
To ensure those big penalties were avoided, the contractors turned Martin Nichols' farm into a battlefield, sinking 3,400 stone piles into the meadow.
Well, I haven't even seen this. They're flooding my river here as well. No one's told us. That's going into the river. Well, this is unbelievable. I haven't checked this area. Look, you can see what they're putting in the river. Look at that sludge. Look, that's deep. Look at it. That's in the river. They keep putting that down the river. My cattle are drinking that.
Do you know how long you need to retain the water in here for it to actually settle out sufficient so you can discharge it into the river?
Well, if it's settling for about 2 to 3 hours, it should be okay.
Yeah. This earlier work here was obviously totally inadequate, and this greater cross-section in the channel here will give this longer retention and give a chance for the material in suspension to drop out.
But Martin Nichols and his family were not the only ones suffering. Just 6 months into the contract, and the upheaval had only just begun. With any new road, there are bound to be winners and losers. One place that will gain from the new M40 motorway is Banbury, for years choked by heavy traffic. More and more lorries and cars were being squeezed through the town centre. For people here, the M40 couldn't come quickly enough. The growth and prosperity offered by the motorway was welcomed even by the town's more conservative traders.
The Banbury market is very strategically situated, being more or less in the middle of England. We're right in the prime feeding lands of South Northamptonshire, good feeding land in Oxfordshire and in Warwickshire. So strategically, it's very, very well situated for handling livestock. The motorway can't come quick enough as far as we're concerned. We are looking for our business to expand significantly with a better road network. And Banbury, historically, has been very badly roaded for many, many years. even when we get the new M40, it will still make access to the eastern counties fairly difficult. You know, we really need a motorway to Norfolk.
Although a traditional market town, Banbury hoped to attract new industry. Industrial sites were being built and large areas of land earmarked for housing. Not only for local workers, but for the commuter. With the M40, London would be less than an hour away. The developers were preparing for a boom.
Banbury is ideally suited for a major office centre. A lot of derelict sites have changed hands and building work is already taking place. Many sites are in the process of being brought forward for development. Investing institutions wish to invest in the area, and a number of major companies have already been to look at the area. They like what they see, and I believe it is going to be a major growth area. I certainly believe that the business community is ready for the motorway and for the changes that will take place. I'm not quite sure whether the local people realise what is going to happen to Banbury. As far as the council is concerned, I think they're at last realising what is going to happen. And I think they suddenly realise that there is going to be a major commercial development.
But for others, rising house and land prices were the unwelcome consequence of the road. Pressure on every inch of space mounted as the speculators moved in. The Banbury 20 Cricket Club was hard by the new motorway. Not surprisingly, it attracted the predatory attentions of the property men.
The town plan was issued this year, which earmarks this ground as part of a hotel and leisure development. People may come along with X million pounds or whatever, but we are not a financial institution. We're here primarily for cricket. It is no good pocketing money if you can't continue all the good work that has been done by the past members of this club for 57 years. We see Banbury changing very much, obviously, with the explosion that is predicted in population. Where it's, from a town point of view, could be dangerous, of course, is that we become totally a commuter town, and people are only here for the weekends, looking for the benefits of the social activities at weekends, but not being able or prepared to put any work into making them happen.
Have we got an inspection kitty in then, so we can see them?
We put it in yesterday. Jonathan Graham.
Because I've done several motorways, I have a good imagination of what the thing is going to look like at the end of the day. And I was looking across from Martin Nicholls' area yesterday. And in fact, I thought, when this is finished and the embankment is grassed, how much will Martin Nicholls see from his house? I would say see very little.
They say that we won't notice the motorway when it's open to traffic. I just cannot believe that. The meadow that's being filled in to nearly 30 foot high. We can see one of the bridges that's being built in the middle of the motorway from here.
From that door.
And steadily, the landscape was being transformed. The concrete culvert was ready to take the diverted River Cherwell. 15 months after moving onto Martin Nicholls' land, diverting the river literally marked the turning point for the contractors.
It's a lot worse than we'd ever expected. A lot worse. The contractors, they've obviously got a job to do, and they're in a mad rush to get in and I don't think they consider the farmers too much at all. Which is fair enough. They've been given the job to do it. But I think, to us especially, we found it all quite a shock. I think there's something for future people that are going to have motorways. The Department of Transport ought to have certain people that would go around and explain to the landowners exactly what's going to happen.
But while the road took shape in the north, in the south, work on the missing link was yet to begin. Local protesters were confident the road wouldn't be driven through their backyards, but 14 months had ominously slipped by since the end of the inquiry, and every week of delay made it more likely the government would bulldoze it through. When the protesters eventually heard the Secretary of State's decision, their worst fears were confirmed.
My right honourable friends have decided that this final section of the M40 should go ahead as proposed. It will be built as a dual 3-lane motorway. Subject to the remaining statutory procedures, we hope to start construction later this year for completion in 1991.
The tough task of building the 12.5-mile missing link went to a consortium of construction firms. With the north section all but finished, they'd have just 20 months to do the job. They gambled that a quarry on the edge of the new road would give handy access to the stone needed for the project. They'd been set the target of finishing the road by the spring of 1991. To hit that target, nothing must impede their progress. They worked round the clock to drive the link through. They knew that every day they finished ahead of schedule would bring a handsome bonus. The M40 was to be the last motorway in Britain, and this countryside was to be the last to suffer the destruction wrought by the road builder's hammer. But it was not to be. As the M40 neared completion, the government announced a £12 billion road building programme, despite a growing voice that said that new roads don't remove congestion, they cause it, and that the M40 would prove the point.
When you get to the inner end of Westway in London, you encounter a set of traffic lights, and they are controlled by traffic controllers in Scotland Yard, and they adjust the timing of the lights to ensure that the traffic from the M40 will trickle at a controlled rate into London so that it won't cause the existing congestion in London to get any worse. So what this road will be doing will be speeding people to the back of the queue on Westway. There's no solution in the direction in which they're currently proceeding. We are, according to their forecasts, halfway approximately to the saturation level of car ownership. There isn't any prospect of building enough road capacity to get all the way there. The longer we persist in trying, the worse things will get.
Environmentalists say building more roads is not a long-term solution for traffic problems. More roads mean more cars, and no matter how attractive the landscaped highways, the cars that run along them will always be dirty.
I think for a long time people have managed to conceal from themselves the true costs of their desires with respect to motoring. They've imagined the freedom and the access to the good things in life that come with a car, and they haven't acknowledged the costs of it all. If the whole world were to aspire to the levels of car ownership that one finds the white paper aspiring to, we would be looking at a tenfold increase in the number of cars in the world. Environmentally, it would be catastrophic.
Such arguments were too late for Martin Nichols and the meadow. Their fate was sealed.
This last 6 months, everything's quietened down. They've put all the fences up. Most of my drive's all in now, and we don't bother them, they don't bother us at all.
Enticed by lucrative jobs elsewhere and unable to finish before winter arrived, the contractors have simply left the project ticking over. The farm and its wildlife found themselves in a temporary haven amongst their new surroundings. Back on the missing southern link, the bonus system seemed to be paying off. Green fields gave way to paved highway as the road looked likely to be finished in record time.
Of the bonus clause does enable us to put more resources into the contract and accelerate our work substantially. And this has enabled us to do what we've done. We're now in a situation where instead of there being an 8-month gap, which was talked about at one stage, we're now going to be ready at least as early as all the other contractors, and the whole motorway will open in one go.
Rather than being the missing link, as everybody used to fear, we're ahead of some of the contracts, and indeed we will finish before some of the contracts which started well before us. In that this contract's been a success, I think that's largely due to, A, the good weather conditions which we sort of had right from day one. Even the winter was quite kind to us, and the fact that the contractor gambled to a certain extent and of course got his quarry permission, opened up the quarry, and that I think has played an extremely important part in the contractor's progress. He's not only saved himself a certain amount of money on having to procure materials from off-site, but he's been able to control that material himself, and he's sort of virtually been there with no transport difficulties.
With the whole scheme ahead of schedule and the opening date brought forward by 4 months to January 1991, the contractors had reason to be pleased. Driving over the meadow, David Balcombe and Gordon Barham had time to reflect on their handiwork.
The end of the first season. And then we've got the 2 culverts to take the river and the stream. Diversion of the river there.
Yes.
It's fitted in very well.
I think the scars are healing very quickly down there. Another annual cycle in there, you won't really know that we've been through there. The scars outside the motorway are
fairly
non-existent.
minimal, actually,
oh,
aren't
yes,
they? Yes.
Non-existent, really.
2 reasonable winters. We didn't see as much flooding as perhaps we could have done at other times.
No, oh no. It's not as harsh, I think, this black surface here. It's quite friendly to look at.
Quite acceptable, yes.
Yes, you get a view of this from a number of places, although King Sutton can't see the motorway directly. It's quite a good screen there, but from other points, high points, you can see the the motorway, and
But it does blend
blends
in well,
yeah.
Gordon, I think.
500 metres at normal motorway speeds isn't much as far as the public's concerned, but it was a pretty hard grind for you, I know.
It was an important day in the lives of Martin and Sheila Nichols. After 20 years and £300 million spent on construction and hundreds of thousands on public inquiries, the M40 was finally ready to take traffic.
opening of 59 miles of new motorway is not only a major landmark for this community, but it's also an important and crucial transport development for the nation as a whole. I believe all who have been associated with this project can be proud of their achievement, and I congratulate them for it. Ladies and gentlemen, it's with very great pleasure, using this example of new modern technology, that I now, by cutting this ribbon, declare open this 59-mile stretch of the M40 between Oxford and Birmingham.
He's blowing the whistle for you. Good Lord.
Well, that's it. Makes me feel very sick.
Does it really? That's silly.
I do. It's a very sad day for me, definitely. When I saw that police car rolling off, I thought, this is the last moment of peace. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 12 months of a year, my lifetime. We should always have the noise. And we always had such a peaceful farm.
Some people on that bridge, look as if they're welcoming and waving to them. It's the last thing I want to do. That's more noise now. Now both ways are open. It's a lot noisier. It's continuous now. There's no break in the noise at all now. Now they're coming both ways.
Peace and quiet away from the rat race. It's just tranquility, which is all gone. One of those things you get used to, isn't it? Won't enjoy it.
Our privacy's gone. I should be, when I'm walking, when I'm feeding my sheep or the cattle or anything, we should feel we're always being watched now. This house is more exposed. It's like a machine that never stops. It'll be there forever now, day and night.
I'm saddened that once again, you know, we've got a new motorway in Oxfordshire. The fog's come down and it seems that somebody has already lost their life on this motorway. Driver speed, travelling far too fast this morning for the conditions, not taking enough care, and it's just sad that once again, you know, we're all involved in this situation.
The camera has preserved for posterity how the M40 transformed this landscape, along with the lives of the people who lived here. In just 5 years, the countryside was changed beyond recognition.
But I'm not so sure as this was the right route through all these wet meadows and this foggy area to put a motorway.
When this is finished and the embankment is raised, how much will Martin Nichols see? I would say see very little. We're going to literally tilt the field so that the road and the traffic in it will be hidden.
Six months after the opening of the M40, the winners and losers are already becoming apparent. Many villages and towns are quieter now than they've been for years. Other communities hard by the motorway are less fortunate. Banbury has new housing developments and is now equipped to deal with the expected increase in crime the motorway will bring. Meanwhile, many of the new office blocks lie empty. The cricket club is still there and has so far resisted lucrative offers for the land. To cope with the expected rise in road accidents, Banbury has a new emergency wing, built with the help of a generous donation from one of the motorway contractors. As for the kingfisher in the meadow, the traffic on the new motorway proved too much. He's not been seen there this spring. For Martin Nichols and his family at Millhouse Farm, moving elsewhere is not so easy, though they're finding it difficult to live with the intrusion across their land and the incessant noise that has shattered their once quiet valley.
We just don't seem the same as we were. We used to be happy down here, and we're just not happy anymore. Every time you walk out the door, the first thing the noise hits you, and you walk around the corner and you see all the traffic flowing through. Sometimes when we bought the cattle from the market, you feel quite sorry. You come home and walk into the yard where they got to go, and I feel even sorry for the cattle. You know, they got to go live in this. It really is a noise in the buildings.
Everybody says we will get used to it, but we lived in such tranquility.
Yeah, isolation down here. Hardly anyone knew we were a little bit of England that no one really knew much about, and peace and quiet. Now it's just, we seem to be open. It's an intrusion.
We always thought we had a quality of life here, which is gone.
We're the losers all the way round. Never, for what we've lost here and the harassment we've had, it never can be made up.
would break my heart to leave here.
But I think in the end it will drive us away. We should go away. Cause
Well, I think we will.
in the end it will drive us away.
The next Viewpoint 91, Acceptable Risks, is in 2 weeks' time. Next week at 10:40, it's First Tuesday.